What defines weirdness is a person's willingness to challenge the dominant cultural mores of a society with an alternate framework.
Democrats and the Harris campaign now deploying a new adjective to blast the Republican ticket.
Some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
Get those nerds!
I mean, on the other side, they're just weird.
Nerd! Nerd!
It's not just a weird style that he brings.
Nerd!
Where are they? I think they're talking about us. No way.
Hello, Simone. I am so excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to be talking about a wild shift that has happened in part because of the political realignment, the ongoing political realignment in this country. But it also reminds me a lot of bemoaning I've seen from normal conservatives, or they're like, of the old GOP Inc. days. They're like, I'm not weird. But Kamala Harris has been in her campaign, and the Democratic establishment and a lot of Democratic power players have been putting this idea out there that JD Vance is weird and Trump is weird. And I kind of love it because to me, they come off like, you know, because they are the culturally dominant force in our society right now. And when weirdness is defined by cultural distance from the culturally dominant force, yes, definitionally, they are weird. But it's shown that as soon as they became the culturally dominant force in our society, they immediately became the bullies. You know, they became like the people shouting nerd in like the Revenge of the Nerds movie.
I just wanted to say that I'm a nerd. I mean, all our lives, we've been laughed at and made to feel inferior.
President Obama started mocking Trump mercilessly.
He can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing?
Obama didn't hide his utter disdain.
Obviously, we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience. For example, no, seriously, just recently, in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice, you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
The insults didn't stop with the president. Listen to comedian Seth Meyers, the evening's guest host.
Donald Trump has been saying that he will run for president as a Republican, which is surprising since I just assumed he was running as a joke.
And tonight, those bastards, they trashed our
Franchises.
Why? Because we're smart? Because we look different? I'm a nerd, and I'm pretty proud of it.
There's a lot more of us in our view. You might have been called a spaz, or a dork, or a geek. Any of you that have ever felt stepped on, left out, picked on, put down, why don't you just come down here and join us, okay? Come on.
Oh.
You know, Coach, I think I'm going to let these boys live over at the White House while you and your boys rebuild theirs.
And where the hell are we going to live?
Yeah, what about us, huh?
You're out-of-touch billionaires.
Go live in
your mansions.
I cannot believe it's happening. I heard recently that rumors have been spread that JD Vance wears eyeliner. Like even photographers have been like, yeah, I just took a picture of him. Confirmed. No, you can see photos of him as a child. He's one of those people that just has really thick eyelashes. And also there was this rumor that there was a detailed account in his book, Hillbilly Elegy, of him getting sexually intimate with a couch, which is not there. And these things are just coming out, like that we have to attack him in this way is so odd to me as well, because aren't there plenty of policy attacks, policy-based attacks that we can make? Aren't there
No,
other...
it's all vibe was progressives. They're like unthinking masses. They're like vibe. But
yeah, it's Kamala's brat summer. They're weird. There's no substance to it, and I don't. But also, I kind of get it, because here's what has me concerned: is it's that same sentiment, aesthetic wave that I think got Trump elected in 2016. It wasn't policy stances. It wasn't concrete elements of his character. It was the feeling. It was this groundswell of a mood.
But here's the thing. Actually, Trump and JD Vance have tried to push back against the weird accusations. I don't think they should.
You think they should lean in?
Weird is how you get things done. Only a weirdo can really change things, because they're the only ones willing to think outside the box. This is the thing about nerds. And it's an accurate attack, to be honest. JD Vance is a nerd. Like, he's a classic nerd. Growing up, it's clear from his diary that he grew up a hillbilly, but he was a nerd among the hillbillies. You look at Trump.
I guess he apparently didn't know what tentacle porn was, which, come on, Vance.
Yeah, he's pretending. Was Trump ever... No, to pretend you don't know must mean you have it on your computer, because that's like a cultural millstone there, man. But with Trump, you look at this guy. This is a guy who, until the MAGA movement, was never really accepted by elite New York culture, which is what he always strived for. He always wanted.
He was the outcast. Totally. He was the bullied kid who really wanted to be a part of the fun.
And he spent his entire life being bullied by these people. You saw this when he first ran. You saw the president of the United States when he was roasting people. And I'll put the clip here from the press dinner, literally go up there and roast a sovereign citizen, right? Roast Trump. And many people are like, they have this meme where it's like, that's when he decides he's going to run. Like, that was the birth of the Trump movement, with him being roasted and being like, I'll show you all.
Donald Trump was here just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice. The men's cooking team did not impress the judges, and there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership, and so you fired Gary Busey. Say what you will about...
Not funny. Bigly not funny. Oh, I'll get your birth certificate, Obama. We'll see who's laughing then. I'm not a loser. It's okay, Trump. They probably already forgot about the jokes. Let's just see what's on the telly.
Donald Trump humiliated by the leader of the free world tonight at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Yes, Wolf, it was very clear who was the president of the United States and who was the buffoon.
Yeah!
Welcome back to our 24/7 coverage of the utter humiliation of Donald Trump.
Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we've got up there.
We will make America great again.
But that is who he was. He was this nerd who took over for the rest of us, right? And I think that so many people feel that with the urban monoculture, the force of wokeness that the progressives represent being the dominant force in our society. So many of us now know that feeling of being kicked out of a club because you're not progressive enough, losing a job because you're not progressive enough, being pushed around in college because you're not progressive enough, having people play little tricks on you because you're not progressive enough. We all know this feeling, and in whatever way you're not progressive enough, because progressivism is a monolith. We were just
well, it is what is normative. It used to be that being a little bit more conservative leaning, being a jock or a cheerleader meant being normative and mainstream, but now to be normative and mainstream is to be progressive. So if you are not, you're going to be weird, you're going to be the nerd, and you're going to be bullied.
But back when the conservatives ran the country, that was when you had an evangelical Protestant majority that could be the dominant culture in this country, which you just don't have anymore. The conservative culture now is too diverse, whereas the progressivism is not diverse. We were just talking with Razim Zoomer. We had an interview with him right before this. And what we were saying was, if you get like two ultra conservatives of the same denomination, they will usually have more theological differences between each other than an extremist progressive, Protestant minister versus an extremist progressive Muslim minister. They really are just one culture that is using their cultural dominance to bully everyone else. And I think that many people who originally were drawn to the conservative movement, back when the conservative movement represented the culturally dominant force, were not drawn for theological or ideological reasons. They were drawn because it was the powerful group in society, the way they saw it. It was the cheerleaders, it was the jocks. And now that it's not, they're experiencing serious cognitive dissonance. And I've seen this when I've talked with a number of them. They're like, well, yeah, but I'm not weird. Like, conservatives aren't weird. It's weirdos like you who are ruining it. I was like, your freaking candidate is Trump and Vance. Come on.
This is even something that we found as early as a year ago, if not earlier, that when media coverage would talk about our prenatalism, people on Twitter would call us freaks, which just, and they would use words like, freaks is something that I think an 80s jock villain would say to a protagonist.
Do you really want to be partners with that freak?
In one
well,
of
that's
those
what
movies.
they become.
Freaks. You know what I mean? It's so weird. Why would you say that to someone when it just seems so stereotypically?
Well, it's the way that the dominant culture often reacts to anyone who is challenging it.
Yeah, but why would you ever call someone a freak? Wouldn't that make you feel like you were the bad guy?
Well, no, because I grew up, and this is also, I think, a different thing. Like these people who are now drawn to progressivism because they have power and previously.
Oh, they would have been the evangelical Christians in their time if that was the thing.
They would have. Yeah, they absolutely would have. They're just doing it because it gives them power, and the power to. They're like, I have lived a life according to what society has told me to do, and now they're like, and you are doing something different and seem happy. I must shame that. Like, that's how the culture works, right? It maintains internal consistency by reacting reactively to anybody who seems to be successful with an alternate cultural model. I mean, that's why they had to do this hit piece on like Ballerina Farms, for example. And then it came out that the reporter, because it turned out, we did an episode on this, but what we didn't mention in the episode is it turned out that she had released recordings of the in-person interviews, and she like directly lied in the article to try to make them look bad. And she had released these on previous podcasts when she was talking about writing the article. And it's like, SpaghettiOs. But another thing I note is when people are like, conservatives are not nerds. I'm like, okay, so not just like the main top conservatives. Again, we were just talking with
Redeem Zoomer.
And look at this guy. He's got like a bow tie, a button-down shirt. This has been conservatives for a long time. They have been the nerds for a long time, like at least a decade and a half at this point. And I love the dissonance I see. When I went on Blaze TV, I was doing this interview with like John Papadopoulos or something. Anyway, so he was like, yeah, but aren't you tired of being the rebels? Like, aren't you tired of being the resistance? And I'm like, tired of being the resistance? What? That's awesome. That's like the best life. And I realize it might be that like I'm genetically coded differently. I'm like the descendant of the original American patriots, because what does patriot mean? A lot of people think patriot means like you love your country. No, patriot was a term that meant like terrorist originally. You were the resistance against the evil tyranny. You were the rebels. Being on a righteous rebel team, what is better than that?
Trust them. It ends today.
The line is wandering! Wait! No retreat! Hold the line!
like I can't imagine anything from like my cultural framing's perspective that would be a more enjoyable or fulfilling life than this. Like I love this generation of conservatism. And I think that a lot of these people, because like the guy who was interviewing me, he got into conservatives when they were the dominant faction. And I realized he just wanted to be in the dominant faction. He didn't believe all of this. He didn't, you know, he doesn't, or maybe it's that he doesn't like fighting for justice for the sake of fighting for justice. Like maybe that doesn't fill him with a righteous passion every morning. Like when I wake up every morning, I'm like, I am on the good guy's side and we are on the back nines, but we are going to win this thing by golly. And that inspires me. And I realize that for a portion of people that doesn't, they want to be the ones who control everything and can bully other people.
What would be your answer to someone who was on the normative side who counters that with, well, what makes you think that just being weird is better? Why would being normative be bad? And why do you think it's inherently good to be the one who resists the mainstream? The mainstream might be mainstream for a reason because it's correct.
So there's two things here. There is the mainstream versus tradition, and then there is why is weird always good? And it is always good. No. Actually, I should say weird is also always bad. There are different ways you can be weird. What defines weirdness is a person's willingness to challenge the dominant cultural mores of a society with an alternate framework. Now, that alternate framework can be dumb, but we know that we are not at a moral nexus of history. Okay? Humanity finds ways to improve over time. If you even look at any of the mainstream Christian theologies, it has improved over time, or it's degraded over time, in which case you need to go back to the original church, which looks nothing like any of the existing churches. Like if you're like, well, yeah, Christian theology has degraded over time and Catholicism is the right choice. And it's like, well, then you need to go back to what the original Catholics believed, which is that life doesn't begin at conception. And they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then it's like, well, then you think it's improved over time because that's a fairly new Catholic belief. Like 200 years ago was Pope Pius IX, you know? So we all believe that things are to some extent improve over time. And that being the case, knowing that we're not at the moral nexus in history, we are challenged to look for where even within conservative cultural frameworks or more right cultural frameworks, where are they getting things wrong that we can push things forwards. I mean, fundamentally, that's what based is. Based is weird. People like think based means conservative. Based doesn't mean conservative. Based means saying what you believe is true, even when you will be shamed by it. Even
I always thought of based as being unapologetically authentic.
Yeah. And so a lot of people are like, well, that doesn't align with a conservative mindset. Therefore, you're not being based. And it's like, no, we're just saying what we believe is true from the evidence, from what we read, from the Bible. And that's may go against what the mainstream conservative influencers say, or what was mainstream in conservative culture in the 1950s. But that doesn't mean that it goes against any sort of absolute truth. So I wanted to make that point, but what was the other one I was really excited to make here? Oh, yes, I mentioned traditionalism versus normative. Okay. So I love it when people are like, why would this tradition have value? Why would you put any weight on traditionalism? Right. And it's like, that is the collective wisdom of thousands of generations of humanity, right? That's not like your parents' opinions, man. That is an idea that has been honed and improved and worked on over and over and over and over again, generation to generation to generation. And then it finally got you to where we are today. It's not like just an old person's out of touch idea about reality. But what is culturally normative, when what is culturally normative isn't traditionalism, it's uniquely stupid. Okay. So we need to say that traditionalism definitely has more value than what's culturally normative. But the process that brings us traditionalism is also one of iterative generational improvement. The traditions we have aren't in stone. They changed and evolved over time to become better. That is the way we are meant to relate to traditions. We take the traditions that are handed to us with care, and we work to improve them for a new era, for new context. And so I think that that's also the thing to differentiate there is traditionalism versus culturally normative, non-traditional values.
Yeah, I also think of the Winston Churchill quote about someone being angry at you, meaning that you actually stood up for something. And that's something that I think is running hand in hand with the concept of being weird, that you won't, if everyone agrees with you, or if you are not controversial in any way, if people aren't mad at you, you aren't fighting for anything substantive and you're not making a difference. And something that we discussed early in our careers was where we could actually make a difference in life. And if you are, this was in the context of whether you should work with Google or not. And my argument to you was that in Google, if you do not take your position where you would make the most optimal decision for whatever department you were put in, someone else with equal intelligence and credentials to you, roughly speaking, would make the same optimal decisions. There would be no difference in the world depending on who was in that role, because it was going to be a role in which whoever was there was going to make roughly the same optimal decision. And what really mattered was where we would have an impact. We would be a delta. And you're not going to, in society, make that impact if you're just doing what everyone thinks is the inevitable course of society when running correctly, you know?
Absolutely agree with you. And to add more color to the anecdote she's talking about here, there was a time in my life where I had a choice between joining a venture capital firm in Korea, which was like a really risky move for me, or taking on a management position at Google. And she was like, differentially, you will have more impact on reality if you take the job in Korea. Therefore, it's the obvious choice. Speaking of, we also look for opportunities to help people in these sorts of spaces. So that said, if anyone here is looking to buy server space for AI stuff, we are looking to find somebody interested in that right now for a side project that I've taken on because I think it could change the course of AI development. And of course, now that's an inflection point in human history. So that's why I'm focused on it.
Now, by the way, the Churchill quote is, "You have enemies? Good. That means you've stood up for something sometime in your life." And I love that.
Yeah, no, people are like, how do you feel about people online making fun of you? And it's like, well, you see, here is the thing. I've met the average human. If the average human disapproves of me, I'm probably doing something right. The average human fucking sucks. Oh my God. But yeah, it's absolutely wild. Now, to you, Simone, how did you grow up thinking about this term weird? Would you have thought about the term weird as like an intrinsically negative term growing up, or would you have taken it as a compliment?
I would have taken it as a compliment, which is another reason why I find this campaign tactic so perplexing. I thought that everyone, when asked who they were in high school, the default as a joke, as a trope answer was, I was the weird one. I floated between crowds. I didn't affiliate with really anyone. And I thought that everyone saw themselves as weird and considered themselves weird. And the fact that they're attacking someone as weird, I thought, well, they're only going to alienate themselves from everyone who identifies as weird. Apparently, I was incorrect in this being a pervasive trope. Am I missing something here? Or was that actually a thing?
No, I thought it was a thing too. I always thought weird was a good thing, right? Like,
or at least it was how people personally identified. So if you saw other people accusing someone of being weird, it's that same effect that I said about freaks, that if you saw someone calling someone else weirdo or freak, they would think the name caller was the bad guy, not the name called.
Well, and I think that this sort of shows that the Progressive Party has become a party of people desperate to fit in, desperate to not be criticized.
But if you were desperate to fit in, you'd be like, well, we're all weirdos here, and like, we're inclusive. I thought that was the thing. I thought that was...
Once they got cultural control of society, no. Now the weirdos are the bad guys. They're the cool kids. And I'd also like to point out here that some people will be like, how can you be saying this? Trump's the bully, not Kamala. Look at the way he acted in like his early debates where he would make fun of people. And I was like, okay, come on, bro. In Trump's early debates, when he was debating against like the other conservatives to win the ticket, he was hands down seen as the underdog. He was a giant political institution that was constantly making fun of him, saying his political campaign was a joke.
Nobody took him seriously.
Nobody took him seriously, and constantly clowned on him. He was the guy going up. He's the little nerdy kid who you saw getting bullied and then like turns out to know karate or something.
No, here's the problem is you haven't seen it, but in 16 Candles, he's the blonde nerd. And it for those who haven't seen the movie, including you, Malcolm, in the movie, there is this character who's kind of like the bully of the nerds who comes up to them and is like, I'm gonna have sex with this girl. You know, I'm gonna like get her panties. And then he does get her panties, but he doesn't actually have sex with her. He just convinces her to loan her panties to him so he can tell his friends that he had sex with her.
That's so Trump.
Yeah, but like that's Trump. Trump is like just I want to be cool. I want people to see that I'm cool. And he may come across as a bully sometimes, I think mostly because he's fronting. He wants people
No.
to see him
It's
that
not
way.
because he does, unless you are completely brainwashed. Trump never looked like a bully to you. If you are brainwashed, then you're like anyone who fights the urban monoculture automatically bad. But Trump was
Come on,
clearly
the
in a
name
position-
calling, the he does.
Yeah,
things.
but he was clearly in a position of non-power. He had a giant political apparatus that was against him on both sides. He had an entire press corps that was
come
against
on,
him.
Malcolm. He wants to be seen as a powerful bully.
No, regardless,
you're fired.
most
Come on,
nerds-
Malcolm.
Most nerds want to be seen as powerful. There's the famous line at the end of Revenge of the Nerds where the one character goes, "Well, I'm a nerd," which is something I just learned today. You know, you don't get the nerd card, okay, Simone? But when he was making fun of whether it was the press or it was his political opponents, these were people with power over him that had been acting in bad faith against him.
Yeah.
And it was exactly to everyone who was watching this with any level of cultural sanity, the nerd in the high school a hallway who then gets stopped by a group of like 3 beefy bullies who are picking on him, like taking his stuff, and then he ends up just verbally owning them. And then like he's like, yeah, but you know, your mom doesn't love you and is getting a divorce, and they like run off crying or something. People can be like, whoa, that was a low blow. But the truth is everybody who saw what went down is like, thank God that little squirrely guy stood up for himself and every other little squirrely guy out there. That is what he represented in those moments. And you can be like, well, that's bullying. He reacted to their bullying. Like you look at what about the reporter who had that disability? But it's like, yeah, but did you read the piece that he wrote about Trump? Did you like, are you just pretending that he did nothing that he didn't have power over Trump? That he's supposed to be able to like write whatever he wants, do whatever he wants without Trump overstepping in the same way that he overstepped in his position of power in society? And I think that this is the thing. It's very much like a how can he slap moment. Progressives are so used to making fun of and clowning on and telling white lies from their perspective about their opponents.
Go on, bitch, say something funny. Uh-oh, he's getting mad.
Jack, let's just get out of here, okay?
Yeah, puss. Run away. Go ahead, bitch. Say something funny. Make me laugh.
Yeah, you motherfucker! Get over there! Oh, son of a bitch!
And then when their opponents fight back, they're like, oh my God, you can't do that. You're a lower caste member than me in our society. My caste is allowed to goon on your caste, but you're not allowed to do anything to us, of course. And I think that you're playing into their, well, basically lie that Trump was acting with any level of cultural authority in those moments. Once Trump was actually president, once he actually had power, he did fairly little actually picking on people. And this is something that
Lock Her Up kind of stopped, and
he didn't. The progressives literally tried to lock him up. He didn't when he got power. All of that stuff for him was because and allowed, like by his set of morals, allowed because he was in a position of less power. It wasn't stuff that he did when he became president. And he did it even less than previous Republican presidents. Like back when the Republican ethos was like the dominant ethos, and you look at like the George Bush era, it was like well known that he would constantly make fun of his like staffers. Like lightly, right? But I'll put the clip here from 30 Rock where he gets the nickname Burger like 5 seconds after meeting Bush, because that was the type of guy he was. He was from a dominant culture and he was used to using it to sort of signal his power over other people. But Trump didn't do that. And he also didn't really front, look at him always getting his like McDonald's and everything like that. He had weird cultural things, but they weren't high class cultural things. Like, is a gold toilet high class or trashy, right? A gold toilet and McDonald's burgers is the trashiest thing I can imagine. It's just rich trashy. He wasn't actually culturally fronting. He was being himself. It is nerdy. But I mean, do you have other thoughts on this or?
No, I think that that's accurate. And I still can't get over it. I can't get over that we've gotten to the point where the party that used to be about letting your freak flag fly has become the party that literally accuses its opponents of being weird.
But even think about the things that they're accusing them of. JD Vance wears eyeliner.
Yeah, I thought eyeliner belonged to the left. They should be like, stop appropriating our eyeliner, JD Vance.
No, but they're like, he's the weird kid. Let's pick on him.
Yeah. And also, sex with the couch. I thought we were sex positive. This is horrible.
Yeah. Is that not like a classic weirdo kid who then ends up making $1 billion thing to do? Like,
yeah, but also he didn't do it.
He didn't do it. But what I'm saying is even the fictions that they're creating around
even the fiction
are power fantasies around bullying someone. To create a fiction like this.
No, it's so classic. It's like something that Mean Girls would make up in a high school. That like, oh, so-and-so had sex with a couch. It's what like Shelby, the mean cheerleader who hates Cheryl. I'm bad at names, but yeah, it's juvenile in invention. I mean, it's funny. I'm sure someone came up with it that, they were very clever to do so, but.
Oh my God. Sorry. Yeah. I need to take an aside here to talk about like how much Dems don't get it.
Wait, what?
The video from Kennedy that unfortunately is probably going to hurt Trump because it connects with like base people so much. Is he has this video, and I'll see if I put it here, about running into a bear. Okay, so
bear roadkill. It's a bear roadkill
like,
story.
Like make fun of him. They're like, what a weirdo to like put a bear in Central Park. And then I'll play the video here, or at least the highlights from it.
And that woman in a van in front of me hit a bear and killed it, a young bear. So I pulled over and I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear, and it was very good condition, and I was going to put the meat in my refrigerator. And you can do that in New York State. You can get a bear tag for a roadkill bear. So we stayed late, and instead of going back to my home in Westchester, I had to go right to the city because there was a dinner at Peter Luger's Steakhouse. And at the end of the dinner, it went late, and I realized I couldn't go home. I had to go to the airport. And the bear was in my car, and I didn't want to leave the bear in the car because that would have been bad. So then I thought, at that time, this was a little bit of the redneck in me. There'd been a series of bicycle accidents in New York. They had just put in the bike lanes. And so a couple of people had gotten killed, and it was every day, and people had gotten badly injured. Every day it was in the press. And so I thought, I wasn't drinking, of course, but people were drinking with me who thought this was a good idea. And I said, I had an old bike in my car that somebody had asked me to get rid of it. I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be fun and funny for people. So everybody thought that's a great idea. So we went and did that, and we thought it would be amusing for whoever found it or something. The next day, it was like, it was on every television station. It was the front page of every paper, and I turned on the TV, and there was like a mile of yellow tape, and there were 20 cop cars. There were helicopters flying over it. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? And then they were there was some people on TV in tie-back suits with gloves on lifting up the bike, and they're saying they're going to take this up to Albany to get a fingerprinted.
Uh-oh.
And I was worried because my prints were all over that bike. Luckily, the story died down after a while, and it stayed dead for a decade. And the New Yorker somehow found out about it, and they're going to do a big article on me, and that's one of the articles. So they asked me, the fact checker just said, you know, it's going to be a bad story.
I think
it's a great
story. And then you watch this video, and if you're like a patriotic American, you're coming away from this like, this guy is fucking amazing. Like,
yeah.
He's the type of guy who like sees bear roadkill, and his first thought is, I bet I could skin that.
Yeah, skin it and freeze the meat. This is an opportunity. There, you know, and also that he knew the roadkill laws.
Yes,
well, it's legal in New York, so it should be fine.
To break him away from this Kennedy stereotype of like being out of touch, and you're like, oh no, this guy F's.
I know. But okay, here's what I want. I want your take on, and maybe base campers want to know this too. Who is Kennedy going to draw votes from? Is he going to draw votes from Trump or from Kamala Harris?
With stuff like this, I mean, this is the most authentic thing I've ever seen. Then that he gets to New York, and he's like, oh gosh, I got to go to an airport. I can't leave the bear in my car. What do I do with it? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll put it in a bike lane and then take an old bike and put it next to it like somebody crashed into the bear to try to clown on bikers. And it's like, here's the thing. Everybody hates bikers. Pedestrians hate bikers. Cars hate bikers. The only people who don't like bikers are obsessive bikers. That guy.
No, man. Other bicyclists hate bikers. The only time I've ever been hit by a bike is when I was on a bike.
I'm going to post a video of the IT crowd biker boss guy, but like I had a guy like this, a biker at my office who would come in and like
with his
biker
outfit.
Spandex.
Yeah.
You know, just so you knew, he's a biker.
Those like biker cleats. Yeah.
So I see this and I'm like, oh my God, that is one. I love that you are like, you know, non-pretentious and backwoods enough to see roadkill and immediately think, skin it. And then that two, you're cool enough to clown on bikers. Like, come on, that's fun, man.
Well, then isn't Trump screwed then if Kennedy's going to draw votes from him?
Nobody really cares. I mean, look, Kennedy is not gonna matter that much in this election, but I will say that I gained a lot more respect for him after seeing this, and this is such a good example of media baiting, where the progressives think that some fact that they are delivering to you is going to make you hate a person, and then a normal American watches it and they're like, that guy is so cool.
Well, he handled this in the perfect way possible. Basically, he hoped that this story would stay dead for 30 years.
Yeah.
Then he had the New Yorker call him to fact check it. Realized, oh shit, this is finally coming out. I thought this would never come out. And then decided to release a video about it. And he released the video in the best possible way. It wasn't him facing a camera saying, this is what happened, I'm sorry. It was him sitting at a table talking to, like, in a room, there's at least two other people, clearly more, but mostly like a woman who's kind of leaning against a coffee table. And at first the woman looks kind of bored and disinterested, or maybe a little bit mad at him. And then everyone just starts cracking up as his story plays out. And as you're watching this woman, you're with her. You're having this journey with her as you're hearing this story, and you're cracking up with her. And it was perfectly done. I don't know how intentional all of it was, but he had a masterful approach to this.
I love this. Before we sign out, what is another thing that they've been attacking JD Vance for being weird for? And I want to hear your response to this. The weird cat lady thing.
Oh, the childless cat lady 2021 comment on Twitter that he will, now there's an op-ed in the New York Times. There's an op-ed in the New Yorker. I mean, everyone has an opinion about him calling people out for being childless cat ladies.
We used to know that old maid was a bad thing, that being a cat lady was a bad thing. But now the progressives are like a party of cat ladies. And they're like, how dare he?
They call her the cat lady. People say she's crazy just because she has a few dozen cats.
Well, I love his response. And one of his responses in a TV interview recently was, I have nothing against cats, which is the perfect response. That's a great non-apology.
They're like, I'm not a cat lady. I just have one cat.
She'll become a crazy cat lady. She only has one cat. Give her time.
Because no, it's we've got to shame this stuff. And there was actually a progressive outlet that I think it was the New York Times you were saying that said actually he's right to be shaming this.
The New York Times op-ed that I read was not. It was shaming him for saying that because, for example, he pointed out that many people who are childless are not childless by choice. That he'd criticized, for example, Pete Buttigieg about being childless and being one of the many childless lawmakers that's dictating the lives of American families, when at that time, he didn't know this, of course, no one knew this, but Pete Buttigieg and his husband had just faced a major setback in their adoption journey, which is heartbreaking, right? So the point that this progressive New York Times op-ed contributor was making was that it's not really fair to criticize childless people and to shame them because you never know what's going on with them. And it's actually quite sad that growing numbers of people under 50 are reporting that they don't expect to ever have kids because many of those people want kids. So, you know, he still shamed him. And I'm with you, and I are clear on our stance that prenatalism should not be about shaming people. But you know what? When anything that people say on Twitter,
you are clear on that stance.
I'm clear on that
stance.
stance.
I think that it should involve a component of shame.
I know you never wanted to be child free. I did. And I understand that lifestyle and I respect it. And I think it's totally fine. And people who want to be child free should be child free.
They shouldn't have positions of power in society.
Listen, Peachy Keenan's on. No. Peachy Keenan is on board with me. Peachy Keenan has argued the best possible thing is that the people who want to be child free are going to be child free. Let them be child free. Okay.
I guess you're right. We don't want to pressure somebody. You're right, because then they're having kids for social status, and that's
There's nothing worse than someone bringing in an unwanted child that's not going to be given the best possible childhood and the best possible shot at life. Anyway, the larger point is that when something is posted on Twitter, like Twitter is for trolling. Okay. Any shaming that takes place on Twitter doesn't count as shaming because it is Twitter. It is where you trash talk. Okay. This is not.
But hold on. Another thing you mentioned about this article is the number one upvoted comment under it was, wouldn't it be better if humanity went extinct?
Right. So the New York Times op-ed that I'm referring to, that Malcolm is referring to, which we can link to in the description, basically was a progressive argument for prenatalism. It was saying that demographic collapse does affect everyone, including progressives, and that while JD Vance's approach to the issue based on shaming, and that his policy stances that don't include support for single parents, that don't support LGBTQ plus whatever marriages, etc., is not the answer, that we still need a progressive answer optimally from the progressive view in the form of social services for, I have to take a donor call. Can I?
Okay, take it.
All right. I love you. I'm muting myself and seeing if I can finish up. Prenatalism matters to everyone. That was the argument that was being made in the op-ed. And then the number one comment that was upvoted in this New York Times op-ed was, well, but honestly, wouldn't it be better if there were no humans left in the world? Like, isn't human extinction kind of okay? Which is, you know what? I tweeted that saying this is why prenatalism is a right-wing coded article, and the author of the op-ed retweeted it because I think he's equally frustrated. He's like, I tried, and no one's listening, and so he gets it now. He understands.
Retweeted your tweet. That's amazing.
Yeah, he retweeted it. Yeah, which is I think
I
it
love
goes
you,
to show.
Simone. Have a good day. I'm gonna go.
Yes, I'm still here. Yes.